Hello and welcome to my channel and today's video why I've returned this particular laptop, which I will get into very shortly. First of all, I would like to point you back to my previous video where I showed a lot of benchmarking in real-time games for a handful of games, both at max settings, at low settings for competitive shooters like COD, and at recommended settings based on the model of laptop that I had. And if you want to go back and watch that, I'd welcome that, and it's probably a good idea so you get some knowledge on what I'm talking about here today. And also, before I do start talking about the video today, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Okay, so let's get into the bulk of the video today, and like the title of the video suggests, I have returned the laptop that I've recently bought, the SCAR 15 2021 version with a NVIDIA 3080 card inside it, 16 gig of RAM, as well as a Ryzen CPU. The specs I'll try and display on the video for you now, as well as obviously pointing you back to the previous video where you saw the benchmarking. So why did I decide to return it? Well, I should probably give you a little bit of background before we start this. Having always been a console gamer for the last 25 years, maybe even longer than that actually, I made the switch to laptops 2 years ago, year and a half ago, and I used this model here. It is a Acer Predator Helios 300 with a 1060 card inside it. 16 gig of RAM as well, and really enjoyed it. Actually found myself playing a lot more games than I typically would on all my various consoles, PS4 and a lot of retro consoles. So I wanted to sort of start pushing further into the world of PC and started looking at laptops. Obviously a big pull of this was all the hype around the new 3000 series of graphics cards. So I went ahead and took the plunge. But before I took the plunge on buying a new laptop and upgrading from my very limited, in today's standard, Acer laptop, I did a huge amount of research, reading different specifications, reading different reviews of laptops, watching dozens of YouTube videos, all fantastic out there. But the problem with all of that is that with this current line of GPUs, there's so many variants of laptops that hold them all that it's just impossible to get an accurate view of what you're going to be buying. The model that I bought, being in the UK, it's even harder than in America, and I know there are shortages on pretty much all laptops anyway, but in the UK it's absolutely ridiculous. Most of the laptops that you can buy are ones that have slightly older CPUs in that aren't even displayed on some of the manufacturers' websites that they're even making these models. That's how bad it is in the UK. Having said that, I found a website that was selling some and did have some in stock, 3080 card. Unfortunately, it's only the 8GB variant, but still thought that would be better than the 3070. Turns out that it's basically the same as a 3070, and we'll get into that shortly. This particular laptop came from a company called box.co.uk, absolutely fantastic website, highly recommend them, great customer service. But as we can see in the video here, and I will be showing some gameplay recorded before I sent it back, it's just not up to scratch. It's not up to what you would expect a 3080 to be, especially when you look at other laptops that have lesser specifications. The 3070 in some units, some MSI units perform almost as well as this or just as good as this. And then when you look at the desktop counterpart, and I know that's always been the factor, the desktop is obviously going to be better. Look at all the power they can pump through, look at all the cooling that they can have. It's always going to be the better option. But it is truly way behind, and specific to this laptop, this SCAR 15, the major complaint, because it's a fantastic build quality, it feels amazing, it's heavy, but also very easy to pick up. Being a laptop, it feels robust but light enough to carry around. All the keyboard, all the keys, the mouse pad, everything feels great. The screen is absolutely amazing. I don't know the specification of the monitor other than it's a 300Hz IPS. And I believe they market it with a 3ms response time, which is absolutely perfect for a high spec system and perfect for any gaming really, but specifically shooting games and competitive games. So what are the main problems? And let's drill into this. The main factor, and I just cannot work out why they chose to do this. Asus chose to have or not have a mux switch, which in 2021 with these types of graphic cards, to not have a mux switch and have to have the display come through the integrated GPU is absolutely baffling to me. The only reason I can kind of fathom from looking around the internet is because it saves power to do so, to use Optimus, which is what this system does, and there is no way to switch it off. Your GPU has to pump through the integrated GPU before it's then displayed on the system, in a very basic term, which obviously limits how many frames per second it's going to show because of the extra processing that it's going through and the downgraded GPU built into the system that it has to go through. The only way around this is to then plug in a monitor, external monitor, through the USB-C, which just doesn't make sense. If you're having a laptop, you don't want to be plugging it into a monitor. It's just, you know, to me, baffling why they chose to do this. Like I said, the only thing I can see is why is because it saves power. But if you're a gamer and if you're gaming heavy sessions on this laptop, you're always going to be plugging it into the wall. You're not going to be gaming on battery anyway. So for them to hold back on the mux switch just doesn't make any sense to me. And it is a big difference. Looking around, it seems to be between 10 to 15%. When you're running a game at 100 frames per second, that's up to 15 extra frames per second that you're missing out on. And to be fair, maybe I'm just being a bit nerdy and a bit snobby with this, but I want the most bang for my buck. I don't want to see other laptops, other systems out there with a lesser card, a 3070, that are performing just as well as the 3080. Just, it doesn't add up to me. Having said that, again, there is also further problems because this graphics card on certain games, the 3080, in this SCAR 15 cannot run at 100% capacity. As you can see from the gameplay here, hopefully it is running at sometimes anywhere between 60 and 85% usage. And that is because there is a bottleneck on the CPU. Given that this is a slightly older Ryzen 5 series CPU, this may be resolved on some of the other systems that you can buy if you're not in the UK or want to wait in the UK before they do get released of the Ryzen 7 series. But having a look at other videos, other reviews where they are using that CPU, I don't think it's actually going to resolve the problem. And I know that this system has a 16GB RAM inside it, and you can, if you split that down to even just getting 2 8s or 2 16s, there is potential there to boost that and remove some of the bottleneck. But again, I don't think it removes the bottleneck completely. So you've got this monster mobile GPU in here, the 3080, even at 8GB it should be a monster, and you're just hamstringing it. You're holding it back by the CPU just not being up to scratch. And for me, it's just really frustrating to go out and want this gear and want it to work well and want it to be the best it can be, and to be held back because of other components. It's almost poor design, and I just don't recommend buying products that don't match up with each other internally. So another thing is the power. It's not really specific to this model. It actually does a decent job with the TDP boost. But laptops at the moment, in general, these new models, it's impossible to find out the TDP of them. And if they boost, if they don't boost, if they're max P, if they're max Q. Almost all manufacturers aren't really showing that. Some are, but most aren't. It's not a guarantee that you're gonna buy something and know what it is actually coming out of the box like. With the SCAR, it is a TDP of 115 watts, which is okay, and it boosts to 130, which is actually really good. That is a dynamic boost, which you can't really control. You can't have it set to 130 all the time, and when your system is struggling, this is obviously for the GPU, so when it is underperforming, it doesn't particularly boost unless it wants to, almost. Just because of the CPU bottleneck doesn't mean that it's going to boost in extra watts to the GPU or even put extra watts into the CPU. So it doesn't really help things when you're looking at the max performance of this particular model. I think it's does a good job staying cool, however, but it probably could have been better given a bit more power. I don't really know how to get around this CPU bottleneck, to be honest with you. But this is more of a point really in general about laptops at the moment. TDP is a big issue because most places aren't telling you about it. And yes, also you can flash BIOS. Specific to this model, you can flash it maybe with the MSI model that has a greater base, so instead of the 115 that it is standard, you can flash it I think to 120 or maybe even 125. I've looked into this, but it just seemed like the performance on the other end is really sort of a percent, if that, a couple of percent. It's really not worth doing, in my opinion. Other people may enjoy it. Given that it is a bit of a risk, if you're a bit of a noob, don't really know what you're doing, I would not recommend doing that. So that was a big driver of why I just couldn't hold on to this system and had to return it. The frames here that it's dropping, the performance that it's actually giving you in-game, and let's face it, this is a gaming laptop. Perhaps if you're using it for other purposes, Photoshop, spreadsheets, etc., work, business, it's going to be, absolutely fine and pull through all of those things. But this is a gaming laptop, but it's not hitting that 100% performance that you'd expect from a gaming laptop. And it's just such a shame that it is held back in those ways, and it's not really noted anywhere either. You really have to kind of play test, and like I said, there's so many different variants out there of different laptops. You kind of have to, if you can't buy one that's specifically been on YouTube that you can see running, and even then you don't know if they're overclocking it, if they're doing other stuff to the BIOS, you don't really know what's happening to that system before it's been on YouTube. So you really have to get it in your hands and have a play yourself to see if you're going to be happy with the performance, which is not an ideal place to be as a consumer. Like I said, I really want to like this system, and first impressions were very good. And if I wasn't that bothered that it wasn't 100% performance, it does fine. Look, it's playing modern games over 60 frames per second. Sometimes, depending on the game, like Call of Duty, is up to 80, 90 frames per second on good settings. On high settings, slightly under that. On lower settings, it goes well over 100. On the flip side, you've got a game like Red Dead Redemption, which is now over a year old on PC, and it's struggling on the ultra settings to hit the 60 frames per second. The benchmark in-game was 65 on average, but in combat it can drop right down to 45, 50 frames per second. Again, just not what you'd expect from a brand new top of the line, or very, very close to the top of the line laptop that you can buy. So what are the other options? Well, again, if you're in the UK, and I believe even if you're in America, you're just not going to be able to get your hands on the laptop that you really, really want. You're probably going to have to sacrifice something, whether it's additional money to go and buy something that's overpriced, or take a down hit on the CPU perhaps, or get a lesser GPU, because availability of these products is very lackluster, like it is on the desktop GPU front anyway. But with laptops, you're kind of stuck. Once you've bought what you bought, you can't really upgrade much other than the RAM really and the SSDs. So you really want to make sure you're getting what you want from all the other bits, which is why I've actually moved away now from laptops, and I've gone with a custom-made desktop. I have got it pre-built, but pre-built specific to every component that I want. I didn't really want to mess around building my own. So future videos will feature that in a couple of weeks' time when it gets delivered, and I can have a play with it. So hopefully you'll stick around and subscribe for that so we can see some benchmarking. I've gone with the 3070 GPU and the i9 processor because, like I said, if we're sticking with laptops, it's very hit and miss with what you're going to get, and what you're going to get probably isn't up to 100% performance given the components that are inside it, which is just a huge shame. I know the benefits of the laptop really is that portability. So you kind of go back to the muck switch argument and say, well, people want to be moving around. The power brick to this laptop is not very heavy. Even with that on top of the laptop, you're fine carrying this around in a bag wherever you want to go with it. But realistically, you're going to be playing it at home, whether it's at your kitchen table or at your desk or in the bedroom. You're going to be plugging it in to play it. So in the future, a lot more laptops should have the muck switches, which will make them more attractive to consumers. I know you can get some now that do have the muck switch, but again, they're still even lesser units. In the UK, you cannot get a Raider 66 from MSI unless you're willing to take a downgrade on the GPU, and even then you're only going to be getting limited by the CPU. So it's all a big compromise on laptops at the moment. In a year's time it might be different. In 6 months' time it might be different when new lines come out from other companies that haven't quite released their product yet. But for now, you've got to really stick to desktop gaming if you have the space in your home to use it and it fits with your lifestyle. Unfortunately for me, I don't really have the space to put it, so I'm trying to figure out how I'm actually going to house this and use it sensibly, but that'll be part of another video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this rambling, I guess, but I thought it was important to get this video out there, even if only a handful of people look at it and watch it, because everything at the moment on YouTube, in the media, different websites, they're all saying how great these laptops are. And a couple of them probably are, but they're probably not in stock, and they probably cost a lot more, sort of double the money of what you can get for a PC desktop. All the other laptops that are reasonably priced, are cheap, are sound good spec, aren't good spec because they're bottlenecking. They're running through Optimus. Do not buy them. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video and it's been worth listening to the rambling rants of an Englishman. Please again hit subscribe, leave a comment if you're unclear on anything with this laptop or with laptops in general. Like I said, I've given it a lot of research. I'm not an expert by any means, but I've given it a lot of research. I know about the power, TDP, I know about flashing the BIOS if you want to consider that, and all that good stuff that doesn't really impact the performance that much to make them suitable. But please leave a comment and I'm happy to discuss with you. Hopefully this has helped, and I will see you in another video soon. Cheers.